All right, what did we learn yesterday? Any light bulb moments? Anything where something made a little bit more sense? We learned from Jason about APIs, application programming interfaces, and we'll certainly be doing a deeper dive into that. We've got 2 entire weeks with Ryan, who's going to teach you all about how to use those APIs. But just to get some ideas flowing in case you need a little inspiration for your capstones. We learned how to do transparent backgrounds with an RGBA in our CSS. We learned about Flexbox Froggy and how we can align some items together. If you are interested in doing a deeper dive in that, you totally can. We won't have a ton in class about Flexbox, but really powerful CSS layout system if you're interested in learning more about that. Anything else from yesterday that really stood out or made a light bulb go off? Anything that clicked? We did the margin and the clock rule where we go all the way around and use that shorthand so we can apply padding to the top, right, bottom, and left. We learned about open data sources and how that information is out there, not just from Syracuse, but also from other government agencies so that we can incorporate that data. Anything else yet from yesterday?
I know we talked about like a term that to write down alpha. I know we didn't go over it, but we did like mention that.
Yes, alpha is another term for transparency. And so whenever you see RGBA, that stands for red, green, blue, and then A is the alpha or transparency percentage that we're going to use on that. We also re-reviewed pushing content down with margins and being able to get spacing between the items that we want. And Jen had a good note on relearning how to add the photos into the file. Just the differences between managing files in Finder versus managing files in VS Code. And then also a good reminder if you are working on getting those photos added in that photo row to Netflix. Important that you include that IMG in the file path. And keep in mind that if you're working with rows, the only thing that should be inside that div class row are your columns. So that poses a interesting problem to solve for how do we get that label on that row, but then also have the items properly spaced out in our columns. So that's a good little mini homework assignment to kind of challenge yourself, make sure you're getting practice, not only with your div class rows, your div class cols, but also with your IMG tags and making sure that those paths are correct. Anything else from yesterday or any light bulb moments? Yes, Natasha mentioned the 3 backticks when sharing code in Slack, and how that can kind of format the text to make it easier to read in a Slack message. Okay, so tonight we are kicking off a brand new project. A couple things that we are going to touch on first. So 2 quick reminders. One, there was a homework assignment that we actually had later in the week that we're just trying to get out a little bit earlier. If you already filled out this form based off of Caitlin's message, thank you. If not, if you guys could get this done by Sunday, that would be appreciated. It is not directly coding related. You don't need to code anything out for it, but we do an intro blog post every cohort just so our community can learn a little bit more about you. And so if you head over to Canvas, there's nothing to submit in Canvas itself, but down at the bottom, it says you can complete this assignment here, just a really quick form to fill out. your email, your name, and then a little paragraph about yourself. And then in Canvas, we've got a couple bullet points for you to think about if you don't know really how to do an intro for yourself. We find that this is really helpful, not only to do a nice intro, but when you Google your name, it comes up associated with Hack Upstate published on our blog. And that can be helpful for getting employers to see you and that kind of stuff. So this is due Sunday at 11:59. Shouldn't take you more than 10 or 15 minutes to fill it out. If you have any questions, you can hit me up or ask Caitlin, and they can help you, or we can help you from there. But just a couple ideas for you in here. The other thing that I wanted to mention is if you're trying to get community involvement, there is a meetup tomorrow at the Tech Garden from 9 to 10 a.m. This is totally optional. We don't take attendance, but this can be a great way to meet local entrepreneurs in the community and get out and get a little practice socializing. So this is open to the public. If this conflicts with your work hours, I totally get it. It's no big deal. But this is a great chance to just socialize, right? It's a lot like Open Hack in that there's no agenda, but it's just a bunch of people wanting to network in the community. This is at the Tech Garden downtown, which is at 235 Harrison Street. It's right across from what used to be the Hotel Syracuse, and right next to the AXA Towers as well. So this is put on, the Tech Garden is run by Center State CEO, who is a partner with Lemoyne and Erie 21. Center State is longtime friends of Hack Upstate, and we've done programs together as well. So that is an option if you're looking to get out of the house, if you're looking to socialize. This is a great opportunity to go talk to people, learn about what their businesses are, what they're doing, get some ideas, all kinds of good ideas here. And I will also be there in case you're looking to someone to talk to or kind of see what it's like to socialize in the community. Just an option to get out of the house. Anyone have questions on that? Reminder that it's something like it's more than 80% of jobs come through networking. And this is a great opportunity to get exposure to that.
It's the timing.
I'm pulling up at somebody else. Well, I'm free till 10, so
I go to work at 6 in the morning.
Oh, that is tough. Yes, it does go on all summer. Great question, Amberlyn. It is the first and third Wednesday of each month. So if you can't make it this month, or if you can't make it this Wednesday, you can definitely make it other times. If you can make it, you can RSVP on this, or if you are kind of unsure, you can always, wait until morning of and show up. It's not like you need an RSVP to get in the door. The Tech Garden is pretty easy to find, and when you walk in, you'll see other people in the lobby hanging out there, and they've got, the whole reason it's called Community Cup is they have like coffee and donuts and stuff like that. So if you are able to make it, feel free to either RSVP on this or just show up, and great chance to network. And if you can't make it, or you want to wait until later in on the cohort, that's also totally fine. And they've got more details. This is linked in the daily outline. I'll drop a link to this. So you've got some options just for networking. Okay, I'm going to go through the rest of the resources that we have on this, just so we've got an overview. And then we've got one thing that we're going to finish up on the Netflix project, and then we will kick off on portfolio. So we're going to add a message to our website that when you are on a very big screen or a very small screen, Netflix is going to give you a little pop-up message that says, hey, your screen size may be a little too big or a little too small for what we designed it for. So try and resize your window or try and be on another device. In order to pull that off, we're going to learn about CSS media queries and how we can make that work. So we're going to start there. Once we get that done, we are going to move on to the portfolio page. Again, if you are someone who likes to work ahead or who already has this built, if you haven't slacked it to me, slack it to me. We'll mark you as present. We will be focusing on this for today and tomorrow. So if you want to work ahead, that's totally fine. If you want to stick around and see us build it or just listen in, that is also totally fine. This is the portfolio site that we'll be building. There is no requirement that you use this portfolio site after we build it, but it will be the first thing that you learn to deploy with Nathan. And so we're going to not only build this out, but also build out this portfolio section probably tomorrow, where we can click on a button and get through to a page. And then we'll also be learning about mobile responsiveness on this. So you'll notice that when I have a wider screen here, we have it in different columns. But when we are shrinking this down, you'll see that it all goes down into one column. We'll be learning about how we make our code responsive using the grid system to pull off a site like this so that when we load it on a web page, it does the proper thing. We are also going to learn about the Bootstrap nav bar in this. You'll notice that when I'm on a wider screen, I've got all of my links here up at the top. But when we shrink this down, we can click on the little menu icon and have a drop down for our links. And of course, all of those links will take you back to the right section in our code. So we're learning about Bootstrap components, nav bars, a bunch of good stuff coming up. Couple tools for this. I'm going to move this down.
Hey, can you move your window over a little bit more to the right, please? Like your actual. Thank you. I just couldn't see all of it on the left.
Okay. I'm sharing my whole screen, so if you can't see it, it might be a positioning issue. Okay, so I've linked the live site to rebuild. If you need to cheat a little bit, you can right click and inspect and see the code that it took for me to build this. Or you can always right click and go to view page source and see all of my code that I pulled it off. 156 lines on this page, and that's not counting the CSS. So we are going to be some coding to do over the next couple days. We also have some resources for you here. So we've got the breakdown of steps here of everything that it took to build out this page. Ariel, did you want to share the blurb that you had on notes?
Be a little bit more specific for me for just a second. You mean the one that I added this morning to the outline?
About them taking their own notes?
Oh yeah, no. So here's the thing. I'm taking the training wheels off. I've been running through your notes, trying to do, this div is col 12, or I'm sorry, col 5. You guys are going to have to learn to do that yourself. And a good way to get to that practice is to start outlining or doing steps like this. And then going through and doing an outline again, like the one we shared for, I believe, news site. And there is one for portfolio already made. Yeah, I believe it's that one. That's going to be your best bet into doing the same type of notes I did, but I'm not going to be able to write notes for you guys like in JavaScript the way I have been. So you got to kind of train yourselves to do it. And I think the best way to do it is to start doing it through this outline and moving into the portfolio steps, work your way through it so that you know what you're doing. If you write, I need this section here with an image, a headline, whatever. You need to know and be able to picture it visually in your head, not just word for word on there. That was it.
So this is a great time to say like, hey, what's going to help me most in class? Because I kind of have three options there. I can either code along with Max, and if I'm understanding the concepts and I can review that code and I can tell you what that code is doing, and you can code along with me, great, stay at that. That works for some students, it works the whole cohort for them, great. If you are someone who is like, I just need a little bit more organization, I can code along for the most part, but I need help kind of planning out a project at the beginning. Maybe this style outline is right for you to be able to look at the final site, break that down, kind of plan that out a little bit, and then go from there. The last notes suggestion that we have from you is kind of going step by step and saying, okay, when I am working through items in class, Does it make more sense for me just to jot down the steps that Max is doing as he's doing them, and then after class I can go through and catch up on the code? And so while it is great for the TA to help you generate out these notes, sometimes you read someone else's notes and they make zero sense to you, but when you write them yourself, that is not only helping you retain that information, but it's also worded in a way that you understand that. So the goal of this is not to have you build the exact same sites that I'm building, right? The goal of this is for you to understand the concepts that we're using in these sites to build them. So if you had to build them again on your own, you know how to do it. I can't teach you how to make every site on the internet, obviously. I can't even really force you to get these concepts. All I can do is say, hey, if you can build a site like this and this and this, and you can understand how we're building the site and why we're building the site this way, you can build just about any site. And so TAs aren't going away. We have TAs the whole program. But at this point, we encourage you to kind of practice your own note taking. And if you're someone who uses a ton of sticky notes or flashcards and that system is working for you, great. If you are still kind of struggling during class and you're like, I'm sitting in class for 12 hours, I know it's going fast, but I still haven't quite found my groove, this is your week to kind of figure that out, along with next week when we get into Intro to Computer Science, because that speed continues throughout the whole cohort, and JavaScript gets even more challenging than HTML. So something to think about of your note taking. I don't want to scare you away. If you've got a system, you feel like it's working, keep it up. But just wanted to throw those things out for notes because we won't have them as detailed rolling forward. These are just an idea for you guys to say, hey, do I want to file this? Do I want to follow this same format of notes, or is there a better way for me to really take advantage of all that time that you're investing into class time? Okay, 2 more links to show you, and then we will dive into that Netflix code. I have a list of requirements, and this is my list of requirements that I personally have generated for any portfolio site that I go to. So this is what we will be building into our site. But if you are looking to build your own portfolio page outside of the one we're building in class, here are some important concepts that I really encourage you to dig into. So one, your name's obviously got to be on the site. You would be surprised at how many sites I have gone to, and it's all about this person, and they forgot to put their name on the page. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Having a contact form or an email address is very important. If a person has made it to your website, chances are they would like to reach out to you for a job opportunity, about some of your knowledge, whatever it is. So we're going to be building a contact form into our site, but you can also put an email address in there, and that is also totally fine. You should have an about section, right? This is a text version of what we call your elevator pitch. That is your 30-second introduction to who you are, what you're passionate about, what you're looking for. Very concise. I don't want to see an essay in there. I don't want to see 3 paragraphs in there, but I want a little intro about yourselves. You may hear the word copy or the term copy. Copy refers to the words that go into a website. So if you're working with a client and you're starting to build their website for them and you get everything built, and then you're like, oh, what words do you want me to put in here? We call those words copy. And so just an industry term for you. I've seen testimonial sections on websites. That's really good if you're doing more kind of freelance work, totally optional. I should be able to download a resume I should be able to download your resume. And I really want to see that as a PDF. If I get a resume in any other file format, chances are I'm not going to open it. Microsoft Word is notorious for screwing up the file formatting, the page layout, and the font options in a PDF. So somewhere on your portfolio page, you should have a link to download your resume and have that in a nice final PDF. If you don't have your resume yet, don't worry, that's something that Laura is going to work with you on. We aren't going to add it to the site right now, but it is something to think about of, hey, if someone's heading to my website and they want a one-page summary of all of my professional experience, I want to have a link to that to just get that downloaded. And then for the most important section, your project section or your portfolio section, you can call it either. It is not enough to just say, hey, here's a screenshot of this app that I built. Because even though you may know that project inside and out, the person on your site probably does not. And so what I like to see is the name of the project. I want to know what you built it in, because knowing that you build it in HTML and CSS is very different than knowing that you built this in SQL and built a database around it. So I want to see a list of the technologies you used or the tech stack to pull that project off. I also want to see a one-line description for that project, because I want to know, hey, what's the brief overview? What does this project accomplish? I want to see objectives, right? Hey, why did you build this project? This could be as something as real life oriented as I had this problem in my life and this website fixes it. Or it could be more education focused around, hey, I built this website because I wanted to learn mobile responsiveness and Bootstrap components and learning how to deploy a multi-page website. So those objectives, just a couple bullet points, something so I know, hey, what was your goal in building this app? That links to what are our future improvements, right? Because a software project is never truly complete. There's always one next thing that we want to add on to it or get a little bit better at. This is your opportunity to kind of cover your ass on things that you didn't get to finish and you know need a little bit more work. But you still want to get that project published. I want to see a screenshot of the project, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a pain to see your code and kind of go through it. So I want just one image that I can get an overview of what it looks like. If you have multiple screenshots, great. We have not covered this yet, but in week 6, Nathan will teach you how to get your code up on GitHub so that people can take a look at it. And then we also want to be able to see a place where your code is running live. There are a couple cool platforms for this called like Code Sandbox, but we want to have some link where I can just click in and see a demo of your site or a live version of it. So you'll notice that as I've been doing my projects, I'll have them on a subdomain. So you can see portfolio.maxmatthews. You can see I've got weather up here as well. Maybe I don't. I know I have news. And so what I want to be able to do is be able to jump into these sites and actually see them live in a browser. So lots of little details that go into a detailed portfolio or project section. Again, not all requirements for this site in particular, but if you are planning on using this as a portfolio and getting it out, something to consider. If you have a link to a blog, that is a good thing to include somewhere in your nav bar or down in your footer. If you are producing content, chances are people who are on your website also want to read about your blog posts, and then any social media links. So if you've got a Twitter, a professional Twitter that you'd want to share with the community, LinkedIn is definitely something that Laura is going to spend time on, making sure your LinkedIn is set up, and then GitHub are 3 common ones that I see on people's websites. Any questions on requirements? Okay. While we are building this portfolio, This portfolio was one that I designed as an in-class project that touches on important concepts that we're working on here. I will say, and you guys, I don't know if you've checked out my website or not, this is my actual live production website. This does not have a portfolio section on it, but if I were in the job market, I would certainly encourage you to have a portfolio section. This does check off a lot of the boxes, right? I've got a link to my resume, and that resume goes right to a PDF. So when my PDF opens, the file format is going to be the same no matter who opens this on their computer or on their phones. That formatting is all the same and consistent. I also have links to my blog. I've got my social media down here. This is my website, and every couple years you'll get an itch to redesign it. And when you do that, you want to just make sure, one, it's mobile responsive, which the site where you're building will be, and two, that it's meeting all of the requirements, right? So my contact button has a contact form. This is a website that I've just continued to fiddle with and that I'm really happy with, but just wanted to share that with you guys in case you were curious. As you're meeting people at OpenHack, give them a Google, see if they have a website. Check them out, right? They may have a particular feature in it that you like or a design that you like. That is something that you can kind of dig into and draw inspiration from if you choose to not continue using the portfolio page that we're going to be building in class tonight. Okay, last thing that I wanted to touch on, and then we will dive into Netflix. There is a really cool site called Coolers. And so I'm going to encourage everyone pull this up just because it's a fun thing to kind of play around with. You'll see on my portfolio site that I've got a color palette. What's a color palette? Exactly what a palette is when you're painting, right? Just a bunch of colors that you've decided go well together. So I obviously have white in mine. I've got this deep dark blue, and then I've got this pink, and this pink is a nice little accent color. And then when you scroll down, you can see, hey, I've got 3 different colors that I'm using here, and they all kind of go together, right? It's kind of like painting a wall and making sure that all of them fit. There are a ton of different color ideas here, and Coolers is one of those things that has a bunch of hidden features. But if you're on their website, you can go ahead and hit the Start the Generator button, and they're going to give you a color palette in here. And if you're like, my God, this is ugly, I hate all of those colors, you can just hit the space bar and it will generate a new palette of colors for you. So as we're building your portfolio, you are welcome to use the palette that I'm using, or you can spend a minute here and generate some colors that you may like to use on your own personal portfolio page. So I'm going to say, I'm going to get to here and be like, all right, you know what? I really like this middle color. I think that that's a color that I want to work with, but I don't really like these other colors. So what I can do is I can hover over it, and you can see it's giving me the hex code, and then it's also going to give me the name of the color. Name of the color doesn't help me much, but this hex code here will certainly come in helpful when I'm putting it into my CSS. So I'm going to say, all right, I really like this blue, but I don't really like any of the others. So I'm going to come down here and hit the little lock icon here. And now when I hit space, it's going to lock that color in and give me all other different colors. So I'm going to say, you know what? I like this blue as well. I'm going to lock that one in and grab the little drag here and drag it over. So I'm starting to build my palette, and I can go, you know what? This melon color is nice. I'm going to lock that one in and hit space and go, no, I'm not feeling either one of these. Hit space again and go, you know what? This brown might fit in here. Let me see. I'm going to move it over, and I'm going to go, all right, that kind of looks nice. Move it back over. Okay, I'm liking all of that. Now I'm going to hit space. Oop, maybe I didn't lock that brown. And I'm going to drag this yellow over. That might be a nice pop of color. That may be the palette that I want to use. So this is a good way to generate a palette. If you don't like any of these colors, you can keep on hitting space until you find that color that you like. And you can also play around with this color. So you can click on view shades and it's going to give you a bunch of different options. So that you can come in here, pick one of those, see what that looks like. There are other ideas or other things you can do in here. So if you click on the little half circle, it will show you that if you use white text on this, it will have enough contrast to be easily readable. But if you use black text on it, it would be a little bit harder. So that's a nice contrast tool that's built in. You can save the color, you can copy the hex right in here, and there are all kinds of other options as well. There is one called generate method where you can choose how it's like generating them. If you're going, oh, apparently that's a new pro feature. Anyway, just a color palette tool. Great for your capstone, like Ariel mentioned, so that if you are looking for colors to work with, this can be a great way to generate out those hex colors. Anyone have questions on that? If you want to generate a palette for your portfolio site that we're building out, spend a minute and generate that now. Lots of cool things in here, especially if you're designing a production website and you've got accessibility in mind. They actually have a color blindness tool in here. So if you click on that, you can actually see the colors as if you were colorblind based off of what kind of color blindness the person has. That may seem silly, but sometimes you design different colors to very clearly show a difference between two sections. And it's kind of interesting to see here, you know, what the person sees, because while this brown and this green are very clearly different to someone who is not colorblind, the green actually ends up looking very different to someone who has, I believe this is the most common kind of color blindness. So just something to consider. Goggin, what's up?
I just wanted to mention that there's also extension for Chrome called Colorzilla. If you like colors from the internet and you want to know what color is it, and you can just click on it and then it will, like, you know, give you like the code or the color code, and then you can just paste it and it works.
I don't know if I've used that exact one, but if you just do a search for like Google Chrome color hex picker, it basically gives you a little eyedrop that you can click up in your extensions up here and just click on a section of the page, and it will show you whatever hex color you're putting the eyedropper on. And you can also use your inspect tools to get that information as well. It's not quite as easy, but if you click on this div and do a search for background, you can see that hex color information kind of comes right up. And so that's another way that you can get some hex information out of that. Anyone else have questions? Remember, all of these links are in our daily outlines, which you will notice continue to grow, and we've got a decent amount of scrolling going on here. If you don't have this sidebar over on the left, you can click on this little icon here that will make it slide out, and then you can just grab week 4, day 2, and it will automatically scroll you to the section where you have all of these links, and you will continue to have access to these links after the boot camp is over as well. Okay, give me 1 second. I want to grab my tea, and then we'll dive into adding the Netflix code. If you have Netflix open, you do not need to move it into day 2. We can continue working on it just because we're only going to add one more section. I will also put the live share in the chat for you guys to join that. Be right back. Give me 1 second. Okay. Let me also go live and make that a live terminal in case you would like to join me. Oh, I shared the wrong link. I'm sorry. Did I? No, that's the right one. No, I'm good. Sorry. Out of these, reopen my live server, get a share going. Okay, so where we left off was our site's looking pretty good. If you got your images in here, great. If you got your refresh icon showing up here to like restart the video, also great. But when I start pulling my site in, all of a sudden things start looking really ugly. Our TVMA isn't wrapping properly. And it's got this weird like half line going on. My play and my more info buttons aren't looking great. Depending on how we have our nav bar set up, our Netflix logo got super tiny. These are all issues that we would need to fix if we were making our site mobile responsive. However, Netflix's homepage turns out really hard to make mobile responsive. What do I mean by mobile responsive? Well, those are the little things that I was showing you on my portfolio page. When you load my portfolio page, you'll notice it looks great at full screen. And when I bring it down, all of a sudden things start resizing to look good on mobile. When I scroll down here, my contact form wrapping down underneath the content, but when I bring this back out, all of a sudden it goes to the right instead of right underneath it, right? And then things like on my project page, I've got room for all of the links here, but when I pull this over and I don't have enough room, I get this nice little menu bar icon, and when I click on that, we drop that down. So those are all techniques that we could incorporate into this Netflix project. But I'm feeling like this project's pretty done, right? I'm feeling like, all right, maybe I just want to pop up a message to my users that says, if you're on a really tiny screen or a really big screen, my site isn't going to look right, and that's okay. I'm aware of that, but because I'm putting it on as a portfolio project, I want to give you a heads up that this is just not a mobile responsive page. So in order to pull that off, we first need to put a message in our page that's going to show up. So I'm going to head back over to my index.html. And if you want to follow along with me here, great. If you don't, that's also totally fine. So I'm going to go down to all the way down to the end of my page. And I even want this to sit outside of my container. So I'm going to come down to the end of my container, but right before my closing body tag, I'm going to hit enter there. And I'm going to put a div in that says screen size message. And inside that div, I'm going to put an H1 in that says, whoa, your screen is either really big or really small. And then underneath that, I'm going to say this site was designed for Goldilocks sized screens. Please view on a larger screen or expand your window. So just put them in an H1 and a P tag just so I get a little variance in the sizing. And I'll give you guys a minute to catch up on that if you're following along. And you don't need to put all of those words in if you just want to put, whoa, screen size, and then underneath it, fix it. That's also okay. But again, put it in a div so it's all grouped together. Put an ID on it because I know I'm going to want to style that information. And then I just did an H1 and a P tag. If you wanted to do an H6, you could. Okay, so I'm over here and my message is showing up, but this actually looks really good. I don't want this message to show up if they're in a medium-sized screen. I only want this to show up when it's a really big screen or a really small screen. And if this message is showing up, I don't want my hideousness to be viewable. I want all of that to go away. And so they only see this message. Well, to pull that off, we need to do something called a media query. And that media query is a chance for you to say, hey, if the screen is below this size or above this size, then we want to apply this section of CSS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say in my CSS, I'm going to target my screen size ID, and I'm going to use a property called display none. So even though I've got that code still in my index.html, if I look at my CSS, I'm telling it that this screen size message by default just should not be displayed. So even though that's all in my HTML still, when we go over to the browser, it's hidden. It's not being displayed to the end user. Then I'm going to come in and use a media query. And in order to do that to pull that off, we do something called @media. And we say we only want to see the media when the screen has a max width of 650. In other words, when my screen size is below 650, what do I want to apply? So to test this, to make sure this is working, I come into this and I say, hey, when my screen size is below 650, I want to go find my screen size message and set that display back to, what do I want to set that display to? I got to look that up. CSS display default. Block, it looks like the default is. So I'm going to use that display block. So I hit save. I come over here and I pull this in. And when I hit a tiny screen, that didn't work for me. What did I do wrong?
Don't you have to put the PX like in the
Oh,
end?
good catch. Thank you. Ah, that did it. Thank you for the debugging there. Okay, so I see nothing. And as I'm dragging my window in, once I hit a certain screen size, you'll notice this pops open and says, whoa, your screen is really big or really small. But I don't want just that message to display. I also, when we hit this screen size, want to go to my container fluid and display none that. So I save there. And how did I know my container fluid? Well, if I go all the way up, my entire page, all of my content is in this container fluid. How do I know that? Well, if I click on this div and follow it all the way down, you'll see my closing div is here. What's the only thing not inside of that div? This screen size message. So I come over here and I expand it out and I get my page back, and then I shrink it down in and I get my message that says, this is a really tiny screen. Maybe let's not cover that. I'm gonna pause there. I'm actually gonna launch a poll just to see where you guys are at. That was a lot of code. What we're, oh, nope, wrong poll. That's the right poll. What we're going for in our code is we've added in this div here. We've added in our media query and said when the screen size is above 650, take our screen size message and display it and hide our container fluid. If it's a different screen resolution, then this, all the code inside this curly brace all the way down to that one will be ignored. And instead, we'll use this screen size message, which will hide it there. In the browser, that means that if we have it open, we have no problem. We can see our whole site. But when we drag it down, we get this message here. Jen, what's up?
So the TVMA is still wrapped around even without that screen message there. Is that something you'd have to fix with the max width 650 pixels?
The TVMA should be part of the container and therefore hiding.
No, I mean, like when I stretch it out and it's big enough to get the whoa, your screen is either really small message away, it's still small enough to make that TVMA wrap.
Oh,
like
good
yours
catch.
is doing right there.
Yep. So that you could definitely fix that. You could go up to like try 700.
Okay.
And that fixes it. Actually, that was totally planned because I can show you another trick. When you expand it out, it's fine. But if you have inspect open, take a look up in the top right here. You'll notice those pixels show up. Those pixels are giving you the size of the window at the current time. So if you keep going down here, you'll see that number keeps shrinking because I'm pulling it in. And you'll see that's still a problem all the way down. It becomes a problem at right around 700, right? 701, it looks like it gets wrapping down. So
How
that's
did
a
you get
good
those
way.
pixels to show up on top?
You just open inspect, and as long as inspect is open, when you're resizing the window, that will show up in the top right. So we can say like 699 here. And now if I pull that in, oh, I was so close. Let's go 695, just play it safe. Oh, I need to go higher, don't I? 702. So now we get the message and then we drag it out. And as soon as we hit that threshold, we get that message.
Like I had multiple divs, like I didn't put everything in the container fluid. So I had to do like 3 extra non-display.
Yep, and you can do commas here as well. And that's a good way to apply it to multiple things. Flash, what's up?
So what significance does a display block have it over there? Like, there be any other property too? Or
There
does it have-
can, and we're gonna see that in 1 second. I am gonna give you guys just a taste of Flexbox so you can see how powerful Flex can be. By default, all divs default to a display block setting. That is not true for all elements though. What is an HTML element that we use that does not display block?
Span.
Span tag. A span tag does a display inline, so it treats it more like text, right, and puts it all up at that level. The other common properties for display are none, right, to hide something. And then you can also do something called fixed and sticky. So fixed is kind of an interesting one. If I wanted, let me target my show name and say, I want that to be display fixed. Don't do this, by the way, I'm just showing an example. And I'll say, I want that to be fixed 50 pixels off the top of the page. Now that's gonna make a little liar of me. What fixed is supposed to do is say, no matter where you put that div, it's going to stay, or is it display static? No, it's fixed. Display, or am I thinking position? Display CSS W3 schools. Oh no, okay, so our only options are in, that's not right.
Positions, I think you're thinking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's right.
I'm
Position.
mixing position and display. So you can do grid, you can do inline block. Table is one that is not widely used anymore. But there are different properties you can use there. The most three common that I see are inline block and flex. Grid is becoming more popular now. And then there are like hybrids between those two. So you can do inline blocks and inline grid and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, you will see block, flex, grid, or none, or inline.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I was intermixing position. Natasha, what's up?
Okay, I'm not really sure how to ask this question, but I'm gonna try to make it make sense. So in your CSS, you use a an ID for the screen size message. Is that what that is?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so that ID is addressing something outside of the container in HTML, but you still have instructions related to container fluid. So how does that work?
So whatever properties are in these curly braces here are only going to apply to whatever selector that I have here. So this display block is going to apply to my screen size message. So basically anything inside this div.
Okay.
Same goes for my container fluid. I'm going to apply a display of none only to my container fluid, but I've got one more condition on top of that. The code in here applying to both of those HTML elements is only going to apply if the screen width is below 702 pixels.
So is that, okay, when the screen size shrinks, are you telling the screen to now have obviously no display? I want no pictures, no nothing, but I do want it to tell you those words up there.
I want you to display nothing inside the container fluid, but instead to display the screen size message.
Got it. Makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Sequoia, what's up?
So I can't figure out why, like when I move it smaller, it's like those words are not popping up for me.
Okay. Do you have this screen size message display none that I slipped in?
Yes.
Okay. Share the screen. Let's take a look.
I'm sure desktop 1, right?
Yes, please. Unless your code is on desktop 2, and then you can share that one. Okay. So you got your screen size message, you've got your ID in, it looks like you've got the div at the right spot. And width, you got the PX in. Okay, Let me see what it's doing in the browser because I don't see anything wrong at first glance.
Do I have to switch
So
to?
shrink it as small as possible. That's interesting. So it's like half working, right? Because it's hiding your container fluid for you. But what it's not doing is making the message show up.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's just make sure. I'm going to click on this closing div here, and I'm going to hope that's closing out my container. So I scroll up, and it turns out it's only closing out my row. So I'm going to go up to my container, and that starts all the way up here, and I'm going to see where that closing div is. So I'm going to come down here, and my closing div is missing, right? We didn't see anything else with that lighter color to show that it's lining up. So I'm going to come all the way down here, and I'm going to guess, I'm going to hope that you're actually missing a closing div for your container. So I'm going to put that in and save it. Now, when I click on this div and scroll back up, notice it's lining up with my container now. And so that closing div was telling it now we're outside of the container and we want a different div to show up for the message. So I take this, I shrink it back down. Now I've got my message and I pull it back up and it's good to go.
Okay, yesterday I was trying to find that. I knew that that was missing, but I was like, where is it? I don't know. All right, thank you.
$19 different things that can go wrong. And sometimes it's not just in our CSS, sometimes it's the structure of our HTML. I'm actually surprised that Prettier wasn't yelling at you for that. Yeah, I'm just surprised on that. Okay. So if you got this working, great. Looks like most of you were able to, so that's good. And if not, totally fine. Just make sure you understand the concepts. We can actually change some of our requirements here. So one thing is that when I get this out to a really big screen, I also don't like the look of this. I may want a message, that same message to show up and say, hey, the screen's too big. In order to pull that off, I can just use a comma here and say the min width is also 1400 px. So if I save that and drag it all the way open, oh, what did I do wrong now? Save, refresh. Maybe I can't get that big. Yeah, okay, let me drop this down to 1200. Okay, now I get the message. Your screen is either really big or really small. I drag it down in, I get the Goldilocks area, my whole site shows up, I keep dragging it down, and I get that message. So the comma and then setting another property there is a way that you can make it apply not only to a small screen, but also a big screen as well. One last thing I want to go through. I really want to get this content centered on the screen. If I pull up what my final site looks like, you'll notice when I hit that small screen size, I get this nicely formatted text right in the center. And that's what I want to go for. And if I look at it here, all I really want to do is get this centered in the page. I want it to kind of flex itself around to get in the right position. Well, in order to do that, that's where that Flexbox Froggy really comes into play. And if you haven't done that Flexbox Froggy yet, you'll see that when you are working through that, the frogs are kind of moving around based off of the available space those frogs can be in, right? The whole goal of Flexbox Froggy is to say, hey, I want them to kind of be in the center, or I want them to be horizontally centered or vertically centered. Well, it turns out in the roughly 30 years that CSS has been out, centering things in CSS is still surprisingly hard. And Flexbox has a steeper learning curve, but really helps with being able to lay things out the way that we want. So if this goes over your head, don't panic. You can go into Flexbox Froggy. You can learn about some of these properties. But in order to pull this off, what we're going to do is say display flex. Now, inherently, that doesn't do anything to our code. That display flex actually moves it around. And we're like, well, we don't want that. What we want to do is flex things as if they are one big column running down the page. We want this to be the direction that you're making things flexible in, to run down the page as a column. So in order to pull that off, we say flex direction is going to be column. And I save that, and now the area that's flexing out is this one big column in here. From there, I can say justify content center. Nope, wrong one. I can say align items center. Nope, that's not doing anything. And I'm like, all right, one of those two should be centering my content. So I come back over here and I inspect this. And what do I find? I find my screen size message only is working in that one little area. Well, I don't want it to be working in that one area. I want it to take up the whole size of the screen so that when it's flexing, it knows how much space it has to flex it. So we're going to pull out our old friend here, height, and say 100 VH. So the area that we have to move the content in is a little bit taller. There's our 100 VH that we use to get that borderline to show up on the new site. And now I've got my content centered vertically. But I don't have my content centered horizontally. So in order to pull that off, I can use my text align and say center. And I'm feeling pretty good about all of this. But if I drag this all the, oh, well, that might be enough to pull it off. Let's see. That's all looking pretty good. I'm happy with that. The last thing I want to do is I don't like when the text goes right to the edge. So I'm going to throw some padding on that of 20 px. That gives me a little bit of breathing room. Now when I shrink it down, that feels good. I get bigger. That all feels good. I go all the way out. That looks good. And so I am all set and good to go. So if these properties are a little overwhelming to you, that is okay. This is what Flexbox Froggy covers, is all of these flex directions and the importance of display flex to justify content, all of that stuff, all flex properties. Natasha, you were asking about VH or PX. VH is viewport height. So it's 100% of the viewport height, which starts here and goes all the way down to here. If I made that 100 pixels, pixels are a static value. So you can see that this was taller than 100 pixels and it cut off my screen. The screen size could change, right? I could get this perfect and I could say, hey, this is like 700 pixels or 500 pixels. And now that looks great now, but what happens when I close my inspect? It's not centered because what I'm doing is I'm specifying a static number. So instead of using a static number, I'm going to say instead it should be 100% of the viewport height, or in other words, 100% of the window. And that's what's going to get it to perfectly center for me. So pixels, when we've got a static value, when we go, hey, we know we always want a certain area around the button that's breathing room. VH, when we're trying to do something based off of the percentage of the entire page or the entire page.
So pixels just kind of just are in place wherever they are, however you size them, no matter what size the screen is, but the VH is addressing the entire screen, whatever size the screen is.
Correct. Yep. And if you wanted this to be in like the top 25% of the screen, you could actually do 50 VH, and then it would show up at the top quarter of the screen instead.
That's
Not a
awesome.
bad look. So hopefully that shows you the power of flex. And when you're working with dynamic screen sizes and really working with responsiveness, flex is a great property to use. That also goes for nav bars. Not something that you absolutely have to use when you're building a website, but when you are really working with a lot of different screen sizes, that unlocks a new level of power for moving items around. Okay, take a minute just to review this before we put this project to rest. Read through the code. If you've got any lingering questions, now's the time to throw them out in chat. If your code is not working, now is the time to raise your hand. Make sure you understand just the basics of what we did, how the media queries are working. Take a hot minute just to read through everything, and then we will move on to our portfolio project.
I do have one question about the image fluid.
Yep.
Why did we put that there again?
The image fluid is without the image fluid, the size of the image is always going to come in at whatever resolution the image is. Okay. So this is, you notice, is way too big. It's not fitting inside the column that I put it in. And no matter how I change my screen size, it's always remaining at that resolution, right? So what the image fluid does is it tells it, hey, pretend like I'm pouring this image in as a fluid, only spill out, only be as wide as the column that I'm putting you in. So now when I save that, you'll notice it stays right with inside the column. And we can prove that because if we go and inspect and hover over that column, we can see where that column is showing up.
Thank you.
No problem. We do that same image fluid if you're going to do your show rows as well, to basically say, hey, this should be as wide as the column itself. Any other questions in this code before we move on? Danny, what's up?
I just have a quick question. I did everything and it's just showing the screen is black and it was saying, whoa, your screen is too big. Is that right? Or
it's right as long as if you collapse your window down a little bit, and if you get it in a sweet zone, all of your content should show back up.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, why is it not doing anything? Because every time I would shrink, it still shows it as black.
If you don't want the big screen size, like if you don't want that message to show up if the window is too big, you can take out this min width right here, and then it should go back to showing and only show your only show that message if the screen size is tiny. But that's up to you to kind of fiddle with those thresholds. It's not right though if you get it below 1200 pixels and above 702 and your content isn't showing, then there's something wrong with the code.
Okay, I'm not sure. Can I just share with you?
Yeah. Go for it.
Thank you.
Okay, so everything looks right here. Take me over to your browser.
No, I gotta go live again. Let me go real quick. 'Cause I turned it off because I was like, what is happening?
Okay, so you're in full screen mode, which means you can't resize your browser window, which is really important as a developer to be able to test at multiple screen sizes. So if you come out of full screen mode,
No, there it is. Come on. It's hiding.
and then just drag that out a little bit wider, you'll see
Okay,
your
awesome.
content
All
comes
right.
back. And then if you go all the way out, you'll get that message back because it's too big. So that's
All
what
right,
our media queries we're playing around with. But you may say, you know what, I want it to show up on big size screens anyway. And then you could just take out that min width section of the code and the message would only show up on really tiny screens.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Max.
No problem. Yeah, I show that second range just so you've got an idea that you can apply it to only screens in a certain size, but you may decide that you only like that for the smaller message, and that's fine too. Any other questions? Okay, so we're gonna get our file set up before break, and then we will go on break. So I am going to I'm gonna close out everything. I'm going to head to my code on my desktop, not in VS Code. I'm going to go to my week 4 folder. And because we are starting from scratch, which I know is everyone's favorite thing to do, we're going to do a new folder called day 2. And we're going to call it portfolio. I'm going to hit enter on that. I'm going to grab this folder and drag it into my VS Code to pop it open. And I'm going to create 2 new files, one called index.html, and the other one, clicking on the new file icon up here, called style.css. In my index.html, I'm going to use my Emmet abbreviation. So I'm going to do an exclamation point and hit enter, and it's going to drop in my whole page for me. Now, inside of this, inside the title document area, I'm going to put my name. That way that shows up on the tab instead of just document. Natasha, what's up?
Remember that one time my file thingy disappeared? It happened again.
So you should have Finder in the bottom left.
Okay.
If you click on Finder, that's going to open a new window for you. And then over here on the left, you can go to desktop and go into your My Code.
No. I mean, inside of VS Code, the little emblem to make a new, whichever one it was, the folder or the file, and it was gone. Remember, you had to remotely like re-add it last time.
Share your screen. Let's take a look. Now I know what you're talking about.
It disappeared again.
Share your screen. I can help you there. Mo, the Emmet abbreviation is just an exclamation point and then enter in your index.html file, and that should drop everything in for you.
I don't know why it's doing this weird stuff. I don't think I did it. It's like
No.
taking to the settings.
Coming through now.
Oh, okay, that's the wrong one. This is your code.
I'm guessing it popped open system settings because somehow the screen recording and privacy got unchecked, and that's why we can't see your screen.
Oh, so can you see it now?
No.
Oh my gosh. Did I do it?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, y'all. Um,
There you go. Now it's working.
Okay,
So we're seeing the C5 daily outlines.
there's a button missing here.
No, the screen you shared was the C5 daily outlines. You didn't share your VS Code.
Oh my gosh. How do I change it?
You have to stop the screen share and restart it.
Okay.
The title of the site you can put in your name, or you can put in portfolio if you prefer. And then the two file names are index.html and style.css.
I'll just figure it out on break
Okay,
and then
that's fine.
share it with you then.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going here. Anyone else need help? Goggin, what's up?
So I want to show you my code real quick because I already designed a little bit of it, but I wasn't sure. You see it?
I see coolers and your code.
Okay, yeah, right here. Hold on 1 second. Oh no, you stay here. You move. Okay. So this is how I made the thing a little bit here.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to do. I want to follow you with this a little bit. Let's see.
Oh
This
yeah,
is,
that's nice.
but I can't get the damn arrow in the bottom. I don't know how to.
So
do-
for the arrow, you need the it looks like you're probably missing the font for the material. No, it looks like you have the font.
Yeah, I have here, and but I don't know why. Is it like? Let's see. Maybe if I. Oh. Nope. No, it doesn't work.
Give me remote for 1 second.
Oh, yeah, right here. There you go.
My gut is telling me I think you grabbed the wrong link tag and that's why it's not working.
I thought about that, but I couldn't find the right one, I guess.
So if I just do like expand and do this one, it's not this one that you want to use, it's
Oh.
this one down here.
I used that one, I think.
So if I put this in, the other one can work, but you also have to put this code in with it, and then that's just a paint. So if I expand more. I don't think your ID would break it. It shouldn't. Oh, you also had material icons instead of material symbols outlined.
Oh,
So if I
okay.
save that, there you go.
Oh, there you go. Dumbass. How you make it bigger?
That you can do with font size
Okay, good.
in your
Thank you.
CSS.
Well, I'm gonna follow you. I just wanted to show you my code if it looks like fine, so
Looks
I can
good.
follow you. You know.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so a couple things that we need to get set up here. We need to go get our bootstrap because we need to use the grid system. So I'm going to head to getbootstrap.com. I'm going to go to the docs. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to get my link tag here and copy that all the way over. Come back over here and paste that in. I also, oh, I did not share a live share link. My bad. There you go. Sorry. Get my go live working as well. Okay, it auto shared that. Okay. So I'm going to paste in my bootstrap link. I also know that I'm going to need my material icon. So I'm going to do a search for Google material icons. Going to click in there. I'm going to just grab the expand more because I think we're going to need that. But the static icon font is what I want. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come back over and I'm going to paste that in. If it's easier to copy these links right from my code instead of following along on the website, that's fine. Just keep in mind that if you're working on one of your own projects, you want to know how to navigate the site and get to the code yourself. So those two are going to get added in. And then we need one final link tag. This is going to be an REL of my style sheet. Ooh. And finally, oh, why is autocomplete hating me? Okay, REL style sheet and the href to my style.css. So I'm going to throw that in. And once I get those 3 tags in, I just want to make sure everything's working. So I'm going to do just an H1 that says my name in it. I'm going to take my style.css and target that H1 and make the color red in there. I save, I head back over to my go live. I see Mac showing up not only in red, but also not in Times New Roman. That to me is telling me my Bootstrap has been loaded in and that I've got my style sheet properly linked. So once I've got that red max or whatever, you are good to go on break and we are all set up and can dive in as soon as you get back.
$7:25 or 7:30?
7:25 for break. Go on break and I will see you in a little over 25 minutes. I will also stick around in case anyone needs help. Again, this red max is what we're shooting for in a font other than Times New Roman. And we've got our Bootstrap link, we've got our material symbols link, and we've got our style.css showing up.
Max, could you please show me how to get the materials link again?
Yep, no problem. I'm going to do a search for Google material icons and click on the first link there. Then I am going to pick any one of the icons because the link stays the same for all of them. And over on the right side, don't fall for the variable icon font. You want to come down to the static icon font and then hit the little copy icon here. And then that gets pasted in anywhere in my head section as long as it's above my style.css.
Thank you.
No
Can
problem.
you go over the Bootstrap one too?
Yeah. Bootstrap is getbootstrap.com, or you can Google Bootstrap. You can click read the docs or click on docs in the nav bar. Under introduction, under the quick start, you scroll down to number 2. And it's the link, the only link tag in the head there. Highlight that whole thing and keep in mind it's a really long one. So you've got to hold your cursor all the way over to the right. And then that's the only link tag that we're going to grab. Spoiler alert, we're also going to take this script tag in, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. Not tonight, but
JavaScript. It's gonna be fun. Oh shit. Is my mic?
yeah, your mic is on.
Sorry guys, if you guys heard that.
Natasha, are you around for getting that fixed?
Yeah, I'm still here trying to figure it out.
Okay. On your Mac, go to Apple in the very top left. And then does yours say system settings or system preferences?
System settings.
Okay, go ahead and click on system settings.
Mm-hmm.
Then go down to privacy and security on that left nav bar.
Mm-hmm.
Then go into screen recording. And is Zoom toggled over to on?
It is, but Chrome was not. And now that I think about it, I'm not doing the Zoom classroom from the Zoom app. I'm doing it from Chrome.
That's the problem. So if you leave and rejoin it through the Zoom app, I'll be able to screen share with you.
I can't get the thing, the arrow thing bigger with the font size.
Make sure you're applying the font size to the div the arrow is in, not to the span itself.
Oh, okay, all right.
75% sure that will fix your problem. Not positive though. No?
It did not.
All right, now I gotta look at my code.
Huh.
Pretty sure I
That's
did mine with font size.
Font weight maybe? Oh, that wouldn't do anything.
No, I did font size 75px on the
Some-
span itself, and that worked.
Huh.
Oh, but you know what? I'm using the older material icons, I think.
Hmm.
And so I'm wondering if the new static font doesn't work with those material icons. We're gonna find out when I get there.
All right, I'll follow you.
Okay. Okay, so Natasha, you have opened your entire My Code folder, which is something I never suggest that you have
Oh my
open.
gosh.
So
Oh my
what I would suggest is go to File, Open Folder, and open up just the folder for your week 4, day 2.
I always end up there because I start here and then go all the way here.
So can you stop your screen share and restart it on desktop 1 instead of the VS Code?
Uh-huh. I don't have a, oh, never mind. It says screen 1 and screen 2.
Are you in the Zoom app or in Chrome? You're still in Chrome, not in the Zoom app.
Correct.
So I can't remote control your screen because you're not in the Zoom app.
Okay, I will work on that during break.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hey Max, so after the Bootstrap link, what's the other website for the next link?
It's the material icons.
Okay.
So if you do, let me share my screen again. If you do Google search for material icons, it's the first link that comes up, and then you pick any one of these icons and don't take the variable icon font, go down to the static icon font and hit the copy button on that. And then you can come back over to your link here and paste that in between your Bootstrap and your style.css.
Okay, thank you.
Kenny, you got it for Mo's question. And thank you for the Teacher Appreciation Day. Did not know that was today.
Anytime.
Last call for questions before I go on break. Okay. See you at 7:25. And I apologize in advance if anyone's going through the video. Ariel just reminded me that I was not recording, so we missed 10 minutes of class. Sorry. As a recap for the video, we're working through, we went to getbootstrap.com, we hit read the docs, we went over to the utilities and down to the flex, and we're learning about the properties that we can use in Bootstrap to get our content aligned where we want. So I added my height 100 VH, and now my content's getting closer to where I want it to be. We've got that content justified in the center vertically. Now all we need to do is push it over to the right. And so I'm going to go back to my documentation, and under justify content, that's helping us, but we're going to scroll down a little bit more and look at our align items. We also want to align our items in the center. So I'm going to copy that class, come back over, paste that in as well. And when I finally come back to my site, now I've got everything where I want it, nice and dead center. So take a moment to play around with this code, take some of these classes off and see how they're changing the content, how they're moving our content around. Make sure you understand that. Just take a minute to play around there.
If you don't understand something, this is the time to ask now, because after this week, things are going to bum rush you. So this is the best time to grab that, or even PM me and you don't want to ask, I'll ask.
That's a great technique, by the way, that you can use all cohort. If you've got a question, but you don't really want to ask the question because you don't want to be the one asking it, you can shoot a message to the TA for the week, and then the TA can ask it for you.
That
A lot
being
of the
said, oh, go ahead, sorry.
my bad. A lot of the colors that I'm selecting, I guess, from coolers just are not trying to work in my CSS.
Not going to work together, or they're just not working at all?
Not working at all.
What was that?
I'm copying them to my clipboard. They're not working at all. I'm copying them to my clipboard, but
Make sure you got a pound sign in front of it. I don't think that coolers brings
no.
that in.
Yeah, no, it didn't.
So where were you getting the number from the pound sign? I copied the RGB and stuck it in there with an RGB. It looks like pound sign would be easier.
From coolers, you mean in particular? So when you're on the palette, the hex color is right here. If you select that, you can hit Command C and copy it, or they've got a little copy hex option right here.
Okay, it's the hex.
The hex, yeah, is the 6-digit color code. And if you're hitting the little copy icon, make sure you type in the little pound sign, because sometimes coolers copies that in for you and other times it doesn't.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, because I was going to ask that too. I thought it was because mine was all like letters, and I mean, not all letters, but mostly letters, and yours was numbers, that I wasn't copying the right code, even though it said copy hex.
And you'll find that on all of your coding, is that sometimes they put the pound sign in for you and other times they don't. But if you're using a hex code, you always need that pound sign in the front of it. It's pound and then 6 digits.
So this one's got like a number and then 5 digits for the hex code.
That should still work. I have seen 3-digit hex codes. I'm not quite sure how that works, but I have seen. Are you sure it's only?
Yeah, it's F28482. So that's why I just used the RGB, because I didn't know if the.
Give me that again.
F28482.
That's 6.
Okay.
It's like a pinkish corally kind of.
Yep.
Yeah, that's 6 digits. That will work. Anyone have questions? And again, this is a great thing to go back and read through in the documentation. Bootstrap's trying to show you the thing that I wish I had known when I was reading Bootstrap documentation is whatever they're showing you above here is what lines up with the code underneath. In other words, this align item start right here is lining up with this first example of code here. So this third one that we're going for getting items kind of centered that way, line up with the align item center right there. All right, do we get our name centered?
Mine
Don't
is still
forget.
stuck on the left.
Okay, so a couple things to check. One, make sure that you've got your intro section to a height of 100 VH.
Mhm.
Two, make sure that you've got all 4 class names that we used in here.
Oh, hold on, I got center twice instead of align center. So. Now it just threw it up at the top.
Okay, do you have your height 100 VH in your CSS?
Yep.
Sure.
And I've got deflex, flex column, justify center, and then
Justify content center.
justify content, and then okay, that I see what I'm doing. So justify content center, and then align
Item center.
item center.
One is controlling the vertical, the other one is controlling the horizontal. Danny, what's up?
I'm having the same problem, but I have all the words. And can I just share my screen?
Go for it.
Or so I think.
What are you getting yourself into?
What do you mean?
Well, I think you're introing up here and you're getting into something down here.
My bad. Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else need help?
Can we just really quick walk through? So like if we were starting by ourselves with like just the mock that you sent us, and we said, okay, I know that this needs to be in the center of the page, etc. What like I guess like what's the first thought to say, okay, I'm gonna go to Bootstrap and then use the flex properties? Like, would that be something like how we did with the other thing and just kind of type in if I want this to be in the, and then just kind of see what it gives us? Or
yeah, so kind of like
I guess my starting point.
It's a great question. Kind of, there are other ways to center content in CSS without using Flexbox. And some of them are easier, some of them are harder, but Flexbox tends to be very good at aligning content. So I would say you definitely could. Let's take a look. Bootstrap center content. And I'm going to add in Bootstrap 5. Bootstrap 5 is the latest version and the version that we're using. Sometimes that matters because Bootstrap 4, I don't think had as much Flexbox support as Bootstrap 5 did. So if we do Bootstrap 5 center content, look at the first thing that comes up. And then if we come down here and look at our Stack Overflow gives us the exact answer that we are looking for.
Okay.
So you definitely could do that. Or you could go into the flex and kind of play around with the things here. Whenever I have to center something, I do reach for flex and then I kind of build on it, right? So I start with this deflex and nothing else on here. And I see what that does. and I go, okay, these are going across and I want them to go down. So I look at that Bootstrap documentation and I figure out, okay, what's the difference between the items here? Well, this is going across, the direction of these items is in a row. And if I go down here, now the direction of my items is a column. So this is what I want. I go down and I figure out what's going on the code to make that work. I've got a deflex and the flex column. So I add in my flex column, and what does that do? It gets my content stacked. And I'm like, okay, we're on the right track. Now what's next? And that's how I figure out how to add in those other 2 items. It's just reading through that documentation to get to here. Now, if you wanted a shortcut, you certainly could say Bootstrap 5 center content, and you'll notice that the Stack Overflow answer is exactly the same. That's okay. You can use this deflex, align items, justify content. It will do exactly what you're looking for. I would just caution you of, hey, if I'm using that class, I kind of want to know a little bit more about it. Maybe I take this align item center and go back to the Bootstrap documentation, hit Command F and just look in the page for where it's using align item center. And then I can scroll up and read a little bit about what align items does. Natasha, it is not weird to add Bootstrap to every project. I certainly use a CSS framework for every project that I use. There are minor downsides to it. One of the biggest complaints is because there is so many different classes, Bootstrap makes your page a little bit slower to load. But we're talking about microseconds of added additional load time. And Bootstrap has become so popular that a lot of browsers are storing it in cache to make it even quicker to load. So there are some minor downsides to using a framework like Bootstrap, but for the most part, I would not build a site without it. With that said, it is totally possible to do it. If you're going for a custom look, or you are a CSS wizard and just want to build your CSS from scratch, it is entirely possible to build this exact site without a lick of Bootstrap. But I chose in our curriculum to include it because I think it's easier for beginners to build more with Bootstrap than it would be doing a deeper dive of having to write the CSS ourselves. Okay, I'm gonna keep going here. I've got one thing missing and 2 things missing. If I look at my final site, I've got this nice little section here of like a snarky message to put in. Well, in the sake of learning new elements, in addition to our H1s in our section, we can also use something called code. And so I'm going to do something like console.log hello world. Oop. I'm going to say that you can put whatever you want in here. That's just a little message. And I'm going to come back over, and here is my console log showing up, but it's not quite the same size that I want it to be. So I'm going to figure out what this font size is, because I want this font size to line up with this font size down here. So I'm going to right click and go into inspect. I'm going to see my font size over here is something called 1.7 REM. It stands for relative something something. That is a different unit than our pixels and our percentages that we've seen before in our VH. So we are going to target our intro section again. We're going to target the code, and we're going to make our font size 1.75 REM. Save that, come over, and now my console log matches with my other tagline. If you are curious, you can take a look at CSS units. There's a W3 schools deep dive where they go into all different units you can use. You can actually use millimeters and centimeters. And then there is a whole section on REMs and stuff like that. And if you hit try it, they'll take you into a deeper dive as well. So REM's not a thing that I use personally a lot, but I know CSS wizards who certainly use that a lot. So I've got my 3 items kind of stacked up here. Now I have a little bit more padding on my final production website. If you want to add that in, actually it's margin because we're moving the elements out from each other. You can certainly add that in if you would like. I'm going to keep going though. The last thing, or does anyone need a minute? Okay. Last thing I have down here is this little arrow button. And if I click on that button, it takes me down to my about section. And so this one's kind of interesting because we've got to get that arrow positioned right where we want it. It's nicely at the bottom of the screen, but you notice when I drag my window up, that arrow still stays in the right position. So I want to figure out, how do I tackle that so my arrow is always towards the bottom of the screen so that when the user clicks it, it brings them down. First of all, I should say the whole reason this arrow is here is I don't want someone to load my website and then accidentally not realize that there's all of this content going on down here. So let's see how we're going to tackle this. First things first, I need my arrow down to show up. So I'm going to go back to my material icons. I'm going to come up to the search and I'm going to just do a search for arrow. And I'm always amazed at how many different arrows that we have available to us. But this expand more is probably the one that I like. So I'm going to pick that one. If you guys prefer something like if we do arrow down, if you like it, this arrow more or the keyboard arrow down or the double one, I actually kind of like the double one. I'm going to use that one. So I'm going to copy that font, that span tag right here, and come back over, and I'm going to drop that in to my material, right underneath my code line. So I save that, I come back over here, and now I've got that, but it's really tiny, and I don't want it that small. So what I'm going to do is add an ID on this that says arrow down. Then I'm going to go to my CSS and do my arrow down with a font size of, let's say, 75 pixels. I save that, come back over to my site, and now I've got a bigger arrow. Again, if that's still not working for you, make sure your unit is correct in there. I'm not quite sure why that isn't working for you.
I'm gonna try without the div. Let's see.
So we've got our arrow in here, and I'm feeling pretty good about that, but I want to get it positioned down a little bit lower. And so this is where we can start playing around with a new property called position. And that position is going to be absolute. In other words, it doesn't matter where any of the other content is on the page. I am absolutely sure that I don't want that icon to move anywhere else on the page. I want it absolute. And what I'm going to do is position that absolute relative to the bottom of the screen. So I want that to be 30 pixels off the bottom of my screen. It's kind of like saying a margin, except 30 pixels up. And where's that margin getting applied? At the bottom of the screen. That's what this position absolute is doing for me. So I save that, I come over here, and now I've got my arrow perfectly at the right spot.
It worked, Max.
Cool. And I can play around with those properties, right? Like, what if I say, oh, I want that at the right 30 pixels? Well, now you see that it just put it smack dab in the middle of the screen on the right side. And we can play around with that. Obviously, we can use left and it moves over, but I'm going to leave that as a bottom property. That put it in the right spot, and I am good to go.
Can we add words to that?
Words to like underneath the
To
arrow.
the arrow, like if we wanted to put enter here or something above the arrow.
Yeah, what I would suggest for that, you guys don't have to follow me on this unless you want words. Take this ID and move it into its own div. Then put in that div, not just the span, but your arrow, like read more in here. It's going to be huge, but then you have that read more. And if you do a BR in here, oh, then we're really screwing with sizing, getting that position right. I'd have to play with that a little bit, but you definitely would want to put that in its own div so you can get the div position correctly and then have the arrow underneath it. Okay, let me put that back to the way it is. Save, I got my arrow in here. Okay, does anyone have questions about the properties that we use to get that in the right spot?
Yeah, my arrow's not showing up still. But I'm not exactly sure what I did wrong.
Share screen, take a look.
All right, so I don't know if I messed up with the spin tag or what's going on exactly. I don't know if what I'm missing.
Material symbols outlined, arrow down. I'm looking at the wrong one. Material, you are missing the words keyboard double arrow down between the opening and closing span tag.
All right.
That bring it back?
Yep.
There you go.
Good. Thank you.
No problem. So Quota, what's up?
I just had a question. When we put the console.log, do we have to like put that there? Like,
No. You can put whatever content you want in there.
thank you.
Or you can omit it if you want. You can make the font color of the code message different. You just target your code element in your CSS and then set a color to whatever you want, and that will change it. That pink is just the default for whatever reason in the browser, but if you would like to change that, you most certainly can. Rain, what's up? You're on mute.
Hello. Hi. It's regarding the project. But if it's a little ahead, let me know. And I, put on a kickstand. So can I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm basically trying to mimic the mock-up, wireframe mock-up prototype homework that we had week 1, which I don't know if you remember the video, the MP4 I sent you, but.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to mimic that with what you're teaching us. And I got here.
Okay.
Now, on the video that I had, I did have this image. It was stretched. Okay. I'm like dying over here to stretch this kind of as the background with a little padding on it, so that doesn't, take the whole screen, like how I had it on the mock-up.
So that's anything kind of off the design of what we're doing is going to be better for a one-on-one question. So if you wanted it to be a background image only, you could use the same technique that we used in the Netflix project to get that like header image in there. However, when you start working with an image and you want to put like padding and adjust the sizing of the image, then it gets more technical because you've got to use an image tag and then start using tricks like Natasha said for putting VH in and negative margin and getting background images to behave like a regular image can be a little tricky, which is the only reason why I'm going to draw a line and say, if you want help with that, I can definitely do that in a one-on-one. But I think Ariel can attest to this. There are some one-on-ones where I spend a full 30 minutes, like just playing around with the CSS to get it where you want it. And 20 minutes of that may be like, all right, well, this approach isn't going to work. Let's go try some other CSS properties and try and get that working. So sometimes it's fiddling with it, but background images in particular can be tricky, especially if you want more out of it than just the background itself, like padding and stuff like that.
Okay, I'll hold off. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to kind of do things a little differently here. First things first, I want to get this link working. So if I click on this little arrow here, you notice it scrolls me down to my About section. Well, the problem is that if I'm looking at my page, I don't have an About section. So we're going to kind of get the About section in, and then we're going to work our way back up in reverse. Because I want to get this link working, but I can't link to anything unless I have that section created. And then we're going to do something kind of fun. If you look at my page, when you hit refresh on it, oops, you'll notice my name fades in, then the title, then this little subtitle. That's a nice little effect, right? We can achieve that with CSS animations. So we're going to dive into that. But before we can get the animation working, I want to get the link working. And in order to get the link working, we need this About section down here. So we're going to do our About, and then we're going to work our way backwards, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm on my page. Everything's looking right here. I'm doing my About next. I've got div soup. So I come back over, and div soup is actually combated a little bit because now we've got section soup, which makes it a little bit more tasty than div soup. So I'm going to say, all right, where's my next section going to be? It's going to be outside of this section, but still within my body. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make a new section. And in that section, I'm going to put an H1 that says About. And while I'm at it, I'm going to also add in an H5. Oops. Try that again. And I'm going to use my lorem trick. So I'm going to type in the word lorem, L-O-R-E-M, and hit enter, and it's going to drop in a paragraph of text for me. I can always come back and style that and go from there. So I'm going to save that. I come back over to my page and I scroll down, and there's my About, but it's really ugly. It's black and it's not got the styling and all of that. So I'm going to try and tackle the styling on that. First things first, I need an ID, and I'm going to call that About. And I'm going to come down into my About section. And the first thing I notice is my color over here is white. So I'm going to say color white and save that. And I'm going to come back in, and now my section is white. So that's good progress. The next thing that I notice is that my background color is a certain color blue. So I'm going to fix that. I'm going to say background and paste in the particular hex code for that color blue. I save, I come back over here. Now I've got that in there, but I've still got some work to do. I look at my final page, and if I expand this all the way out, you notice we've got a little bit of breathing room on either side. And if I pull this back in down to a certain screen size, it will always keep that space for me until I get all the way down, and then it kind of contains all of that in. That is our container. And so I kind of want that to apply to the whole page, not necessarily just to this about section, because if we look, everything is all within that container. So I'm going to go back to my HTML, and I'm going to put the whole site in a div class container, not a container fluid, a regular container. So I save that, I come back over, and now I've got my container. And the last thing I'm going to do, and then I'll give you guys a minute to catch up, I've got some nice breathing room around my entire about section. I want to pull that off. So what I'm going to do is say, hey, in my about section, I would like padding of 30 px all the way around it. And I'm going to save that, take a look. Now I've got my about section in there, and I'm good to leave that as is. It's a lot of code, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to poll you guys just to make sure that you're caught up there. We added our section about, we did our H1 to get this to show up. We did our H5, and then we used our Emmet shortcut. So we type in the word lorem, all lowercase, L-O-R-E-M, and hit enter. And that drops in our autocomplete. Then I come down to my styling, and I add in my about selector, and I do a color of white, my background color, and a little bit of padding. And then the last thing I notice is that there's this nice breathing room on either side. But if I collapse that all the way down, that breathing room drops in. Well, that's all coming from our container. So what I do is I go back up to the very start of my body and put in my div class container here and move that all the way down and close that out down here. And with all of that done, I've got my nice about section starting to form. Give you guys all a minute, and if you are stuck, just raise your hand and we can take a look.
Wait, so how did you put the about after arrows?
I made it a new section.
Section. Okay. Isn't it in the div?
It's in the div class container, but not in the section.
Oh, all right. I think I probably have to do something else here.
Max, can I share my screen? I think I did something wrong.
You go for it.
So I was trying to add the div.
Yep. All you're missing is your closing arrow on line 21, I'm sorry. Your div class container. And then take out that extra. Oh, nope. Put that in and then take out that whole extra closing tag. And save, and that should fix it for you. Nope. Got a prettier issue. Interesting. Okay, let me request remote. And we're going to work through our tags there and figure out what's going on. So we open our section and we close our section. We open our section and we close our section. We got 2 closing body tags here. And we only have 1 opening body there. So that was your problem. You just had 2 closing bodies by accident.
Thank you.
Take a look in your browser before I bump your screen share just to make sure that looks right. Nice.
Thank you.
No problem. Looks like most of you guys are voted in. Does anyone need an extra minute or help?
I just got a question. On your about, it's not taking up like the full, but mine is taking up like the full bottom of the page.
Yeah, we added in, and I should have done this from the beginning. I just completely forgot the step. Between my body and my first section, I added in this div class container.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then all the way down at the bottom, I put that closing div tag. So I basically took both of our sections and moved it inside that new div class container that we created.
Okay, thank you.
Totally my bad. Sorry, I forgot to start with a container, which is usually a good idea, especially if we're going to use the grid system.
Mine looks right, except I don't have the box behind about.
Okay, check your ID to make sure you've got ID about on the section. Then go to your CSS and make sure that you've got a background color set for about.
I do.
Okay, share your screen. Okay, take me over to your code, please. Okay, so your section about, let me request remote. And you know what I think the problem is? I think the background color that you're using on about is the exact same color of the background color in your page. And so because those two are identical, it's not using anything different. So if we click on the little color selector here, and if I make it like just this random color blue, back in your browser, you should see, I don't know if you're using spaces over here. No, okay. I'm gonna. Did that change? If you go to your code, did that change the background color? It did. Okay, cool. Obviously, that's just some random blue color that I picked. You can set it to whatever you want.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anyone else need help? I've certainly done that before, screaming at my CSS for being like, why is it not changing colors? And then I realize I'm using the exact same color. Like, oh, because I told the computer to do that. Okay. Let's finish up here with one more concept, and then we will call it a night. So I've got this nice arrow going on right here. And what I would like to do is make it so that when I click on this little arrow, it just scrolls me down to this about section. Well, the way that we can pull that off is with an A tag or our anchor tag. So I'm going to take that opening A tag and put it around the span, and then put my closing A tag at the end of the span. I have no idea why Prettier indented it like that. That's really weird. Prettier, you gonna fight me on this? You want to go? We can go. There we go. That's much better. So I'm going to put my A tag around that span. And then I'm going to put my href in here, and we can kind of do something interesting on our href. Just like we use our # to line up with the ID here, we can also use that # right here to say, when you click on that A tag, take me down to the about section. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to come back over to my code. Now I've got my arrow here, and when I click on it, it takes me right down to my about. And if I don't really like the styling of that, I can target my arrow down and put a color on that of, I don't know, let's pick light blue. Now I got a nice light blue going on there. And if I click on it and I'm scrolled up enough, it takes me right down to that little about section. Now, those who have a design-oriented eye, does anyone see anything wrong with my arrow? It is not centered. Good catch. That would drive me crazy if I made that on my site. I honestly don't know why the A tag causes it to go off center. It's got to be something with the amount of space that it's taking up. I am actually curious. Let me just try something here. If I take this ID and I move it to here. No, that's going to cause issues. Okay. So the way we fix this is not something that I'm particularly proud of, but I do know a solution to getting that centered. So what I'm going to do is I am going to tell my arrow down that the left positioning of my arrow. So we're not going to just use the bottom. We're going to use left, and we're going to use everyone's favorite CSS property, calc. And our calc is going to become from 50% of the screen. In other words, move it to 50% and then account for 37 pixels. Where the hell did I get 37? 75 divided by 2 gets you 37 and technically a half. So because my arrow is taking up 75 pixels, I want to get that to halfway across the screen and then account for half of the width of the arrow to move it back a little. And that gets my arrow back in the center. Now, I'm sure that if I showed that to a front-end developer, they would come over and Batman slap me silly and go, that is a terrible thing to teach your students. How dare you? If you are positioning something in the center with absolute, you should use some answer that I don't actually know the better way of doing it. However, I do know that this is a solution and it gets our arrow back in the center. So we are going to roll with it. I'm not proud of it, but it gets the job done. Okay, we are going to stop there for the evening. For once in my life, I'm not going to take you right to 8:30 because the next thing we are going to jump into is CSS animations, and that's going to be a great starting point for us getting that animated in. The code text by default should be pink. It is not COD, it is CODE. If you would like that to be a different color, you can certainly target that in your CSS and change it to something else. In my design, I did leave it as pink, but it's up to you. If you don't like it as pink, you can certainly change that color.
When we click on the arrow, is it supposed to work? Like it's supposed to take us to the about?
Yes.
Oh.
Only if you're scrolled up enough. If you're already scrolled down, it won't move you anywhere because about's already in the screen. But if you're scrolled all the way up to the top and click on the arrow, it should scroll you down to show the about section.
Okay, because it's saying cannot get about when I click on it. So I gotta relook at the code then.
Two things to
Do you have-
check.
Do you have the
One,
pound tag?
make sure you have the pound in front of the word about in the href for the A tag. And then two, make sure you've got ID about on that lower section right here.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't know that this is the about section until you put that ID about on it. This ID is matching up with this pound sign in the A tag.
Why is my body, the body of the code is not getting the color blue back? I don't know what happened.
First, make sure you have an opening and closing body, and then two, make sure that you put your CSS selector in.
I did. I don't know.
Stop your live server and restart it.
I'll do that.
When you put your div container in, sometimes live server freaks out because it can't find the closing div, and it causes our CSS to break in weird ways.
It's not working. It has the red border, like, you know, on the body. I tried to put the border. It has the border, but it doesn't have the blue color in the back anymore.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to come to you next. Jen, we put our content in code because I was going for this particular styling. That's just the styling that I used on my site to kind of give it more of like a coding developer-y feel, that it's like a monospace. So whenever you put code, like a code snippet in a web page, you can use that code element. But if you don't want that styling, if you don't want like a code snippet there, you can delete that altogether, or just use another div, and a div will show up just like regular text.
Okay, so that's just like styling it in that font and that color.
Correct. Just like an H1 is giving us the styling of making it a little bit bigger, the code is just making it that color and giving it the Courier new font.
Okay, and is there a way to change the about color different from the lorem text?
Yes, what you would do is, because that's an H1 in your CSS, you would do intro H1 and right where, no, I'm sorry, you would do about H1.
Okay.
And then that you could do a color of fuchsia, and that would change it to that color.
Okay, I didn't know. I was trying to figure out how to put it in with the about ID, but I couldn't. So you'd have to do a whole nother target.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So if I give the body an ID or like a class, then it works.
No, we're not getting that hacky. Share your screen. Let's get it fixed.
All right, hold on. I was just messing around, so you want to see what happens.
Shay, the answer to your question, a section is closer to a div than it is to a p tag. We use our p tag whenever we've got a paragraph of text, but we use a section when it's kind of like a structural element to the page, where if someone was reading our if someone was using a screen reader on our page, it would actually say, instead of just being like this is another div that we don't really understand. It gives it more of a semantic structure so that the screen reader would say, hey, we are entering a new different section of the site, as opposed to divs, which are just generic.
It doesn't work.
What the heck? All right, let me request remote. I bet your problem is that your style sheet is linked above Bootstrap instead of below it. So Bootstrap is overriding the.
Oh, that was a smart one, man. How did I forget that?
Glad I got lucky on that one, because otherwise I would have been clueless.
That was a good one, actually. I was thinking something is overriding this, but I didn't know it was so stupid.
So if you can actually, if you put it back and go into the inspect on the body element, the inspect will tell you what's overriding it.
Okay.
So that's a good trick for.
That's why I was putting the hover too, and it wasn't working. I was like, what the hell is going on here?
That will do it. Yeah, link tags are important on that order.
All right, thank you.
You guys are welcome to head out. I will stick around for a couple seconds. If you have any feedback, fill out the feedback form. If you don't, it's no big deal. You don't have to fill it out. Rain, I would be concerned if you're not exhausted, because I am exhausted every single night and I'm just teaching for 3 hours. So engineering is exhausting. You cannot do this for 8 hours a day, no matter what anyone says. And oftentimes at a job, you're not going to be asked to. You're going to be asked to do project management and working with the design team, or working on different bugs, or exhaustion is a very normal thing as an engineer, especially at 8:30 at night.
If only you knew what I do prior and after as well. Have a good night.
Have a good one.
Can I see your CSS on the about link thingy real quick?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I did it. The link tag. Didn't you make the link tag?
Yeah, but I have an ID of arrow down here, and then this is just my
Oh,
AH ref.
okay. All right. Got it. Thank you. And href. Oh yeah, I actually did change the thing. Okay, let's see if this works. Oh, it works. Funny. Okay. What happened?
All right, going once on questions.
I just have one. This is about the MaxFlix code. It's like a red dot, and I'm not really sure if it's.
Just click on it and it'll go away.
Oh wow. Okay.
That's a feature we haven't used yet called breakpoint debugging, where you can like figure out what the code is doing at that exact spot. But it's very easy to accidentally put what we call a breakpoint in. It's not actually breaking any of your code, but it's very annoying if you don't know what it is. So yeah, just the accidental click that you had there. All right, last call for questions. Going once. Going twice. All right. Have a great night, everyone. I'll see you guys tomorrow.